All right. Hey, everybody. So I'm going to go over the 6.1.3 final exam, open-ended questions, and give you some hints about where to look for help with the answers. So question 1A is in 1.2.3, page 24. 1B, part 1 is in 1.3.3, page 7. And the second part of that is also in 1.3.3, page 7. For A, part 1, all you need to do is plug in these values into the formula right here. Okay, so this is the formula for Ka, so plug in those values to calculate the answer. And then to calculate the pH, look for the formula on 2.2.1, page 14. And again, the pH formula just focuses on the concentration of the hydrogen ion. So you're going to use that in the pH formula. And then for part 3, look at 2.2.1, page 18 through 20 that tell you, like, how does it affect the equilibrium when you add more reactant or when you add more product. So look back up at this equation. Think about what you're adding more of. You're adding more product, okay? And describe how that would affect the equilibrium position. All right. For part B, number 1, you're going to use look at 2.1.1, page 21. Keep in mind that this reaction is exothermic because delta H is negative, okay? So when it's exothermic, heat is like a product. So you could even rewrite this formula with plus heat at the end, okay? Because when it's exothermic, it's releasing heat, so heat is like a product. So then once you think of heat as a product, you can use what it says on that to describe how increasing the temperature will affect the amount of product formed. And then for part 2, look at 2.3.1, page 9. Question 3A. The formula you're going to need is in 3.1.3, page 7, okay? The formula is the formula like Q. I'll go ahead and give it to you. Q equals M times C times delta T. Okay, Q is the heat, okay, which is right here, the joules of energy, or Q is the thermal energy, which this is what you plug in for Q, okay? M is the mass. This is what you plug in for mass. C is the specific heat. This is silver, so you need to look at specific heat up on the chart on 3.1.3, page 9. You'll see a link to a table of specific heat values. Open that up and look at silver and plug that in for C. So you know Q, you know M, you know C, you're going to solve for delta T, okay? Whatever you get for delta T is the change in temperature, okay? And notice how you're heating silver from 25 up to its melting point. So they don't want to know the change, they want to know the melting point of silver. So let's say the change was 50. That means you started at 25, you changed it by 50, so the melting point would be 75, okay? So you've got to do, once you solve for delta T, you need to add that on to 25 to figure out what it was heated up to, okay? So it's kind of 2 steps there. B, part 1 you can omit. Part 2, look at 3.2.1, page 20. Part 3, look at 3.3.3, page 6. Part 4 is also on 3.3.3, page 6. And then C, the Hess's Law one, you can omit that. So I just crossed all that out. You can also omit question 4A, part 1. You can omit. I'm actually just going to tell you the answers to that because you do need them to do part 2. Okay, so when you solve for the MRI wavelength, you get 3.5 meters. And the CT scan wavelength is 0.02 nanometers. Okay, a nanometer is much smaller than a meter. So CAT scans have a much smaller wavelength than MRIs. So to figure out the type of electromagnetic wave, just look at the chart on the previous page. And based on these wavelengths, you'll be able to figure out if it's like an X-ray, radio wave, gamma ray, microwave, whatever. And just remember when you're answering part 3 that the longer wavelength is the lower energy. Okay. And then for part B, number 1, what is the half-life of the new isotope? So that's the time it takes for the mass to be cut in half, or to the mass to go down by half. So if you're starting out at 1.6, use the graph to figure out how much time it takes to get down to 0.8. And then for part 2, again, just use the graph. For question 5A, remember the black balls represent carbon and the white ones represent hydrogen. So with that in mind, you can look in the chart on 5.1.1, page 7 to figure out the name of this molecule. Part B you can omit. Part C, number 1, is on 5.2.1, page 10. Part 2 you can omit. D, part 1 is 5.2.3, page 12. And part 2 is 5.2.3, page 7. And then E, you can look at 5.3.1, page 3, and 5.3.1, page 12. Okay? So hopefully that helps you with the 6.1.3 final exam.